Chapter 86. I mumbled and crushing the crumbs of cookies with my fingertips. Men are. Cough. Perez, who heard me talking to myself, coughed beside me. I met Perez after a long time and came to the palace to play my role. But it wasn't in Poirac Palace that I met Perez. It was the garden of the Central Palace, which was open to all visitors. I didn't commit a crime, and there's no reason to be stuck in Poirac Palace all the time. Caitlin and Kylus set the tables and chairs in the best sunny spot near the fountain. This time again, the cake I bought from Caramel Avenue was put on a pretty plate. White white milk was placed instead because I don't like the drink that much. Perez or the tea, both are growing, but now I didn't feel like eating cake. I stared for another piece of bread and flicked it far away with my fingertips. Tia, Perez called me with a slightly bewildered look on his face, but I didn't answer. Seriously, Bastian is trying to create distrust of men. The wind with that smiling face. Well, Perez looked at me in a low pressure for a moment and suddenly looked around. Then he got out of his seat, walked a little far away to a flower bed, and picked up my many flowers. It was a flower with soft, small, white petals blooming like a round bouquet, and hold it still in my hand. To be honest, I couldn't stay anymore. He's so kind-hearted. Perez, who looks closely into my eyes, is literally a crazy beauty that relieves anger. I sighed softly and smelled the flowers with a half surrendering. The sweet, but not long-lasting scent of flowers on the tip of my nose seems to calm my swollen stomach a little. Thank you, Perez. Are you feeling better now? I feel a little sorry. I feel like I shouldn't have taken it out on Perez. I explained with embarrassment. I didn't get mad at you from the beginning. I know. Then why did you give me the flowers? If sweet things don't work out, I wonder if flowers that look good will make you feel better. Ah, Tia loves flowers. Well, that's true. It was a little strange because Perez seemed to read my mind, especially when those red eyes look at me without any movement. I think they'll reveal all the secrets. It's going to make me feel weird again. I sipped the milk, sneaking away from his gaze. Then I looked with my side eyes. Perez was shaking off the grass on his clothes, while picking flowers, and Caitlin, standing next to him, was helping. Some say that 16 years old is going through a period of upheaval and look ugly. Far from that, Perez was getting more and more handsome. Even now, it feels like he's just rubbing his clothes, but his nose and sleek jawline, like sculpted ones, keep catching people's eyes without realizing it. Looking at it, I said half impulsively, Perez, you shouldn't cheat later. Stopped. Perez and Caitlin stopped moving. The same with Kylus, who was organizing the cake ball he had eaten. Three people looked at me without saying a word. Why? What? Kylos was the first to respond. He bites his lower lip, swallows his smile with emoticon-like eyes, and hides his face. Caitlin opened her eyes round and blinked a few times, looking surprised, and took turns looking at me and Perez. And Perez, are you okay? I tapped the back of his hand and asked. Then his icy face caught fire in an instant. It was really about to blow. The white skin heated up from the bottom of the neck to the end of the hair. Oh yeah, Perez nodded slowly. What's wrong with everyone's reaction? Did I say something I shouldn't say? Your face, it's really red. What if you catch a cold? Is it a little cold to sit outside? Oh no, it's okay, Perez replied, covering his face with his hands. His hands are so big that his face goes in. I'm surprised. Don't cheat? Oh, what about it? But now Perez, at that age, isn't he? That age? Age to be interested in women. It's time to hit puberty. Perez slowly lowered his hand that had covered his face and asked me, so what? So if you ever get into a relationship, you should never cheat. Ah, that's what you mean, Perez murmured in a low voice. Whoa, sigh. Kylus and Caitlin sigh at the same time. What's wrong with everyone? I asked, but Caitlin and Kylus avoided my eyes. Perez, who seemed to have regained his composure, asked me instead, is that why you were in a bad mood today? Yes, I have some matter to do. Man? Because Bastian is a man. I nodded, but Perez asked again. A man. Oh, I told you so. I nodded again. But Perez's atmosphere was strange. I think it's cold and burning. The breezy wind stopped, and the air became heavy. Tia, huh? Your boyfriend? Did you have? What is he talking about? What did I have? A man. No, not yet. I'm only 11 years old. Then what did you mean a while ago? Oh, not me. Someone I know. I didn't want to talk about the family to someone outside Lombardy, so I roughly talked about it. Ah, Perez washed his face with one hand and gulped down the milk. I looked at Perez and said, you shouldn't hurt a woman's heart, all right, Perez? Perez eventually emptied a glass of milk and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and he replied in a slightly sour voice, I don't think you have to worry about that. I know, that you're not such a bad person. Of course. He's no much for Bastian. I explained quickly before Perez misunderstood. But, I'm advising you as a friend, just in case. You've been growing up a lot lately. When I think of the first prince I met him, Perez changed so much that I couldn't think of him as the same person. Now he has a certain appearance of a prince. It wasn't just about height or appearance. At the ballot banquet, I hear a lot about you. Being young was comfortable. Unlike Lombardy adults who are persistent in their eyes, wherever they go, I was still relatively free, so I could hear the conversation at the banquet. Astana and Paris were frequent topics for the aristocrats. Most of them picked you up because Astana hasn't been officially named Crown Prince yet. Me? Paris looked a little surprised. Well, Paris didn't realize he was a prince so far. Like the last incident, your academic achievements seem to be leaking out quite a lot. I don't know if it leaked out or someone was spreading it on purpose. Other than my grandfather, who was supporting Perez, there were a few who could benefit from such rumors. For example, the emperor who is weighing Astana and Perez and getting a lot out of Angenas. And there's nothing we can do from the beginning. Anyway, besides Astana, you are the only surviving prince who was grown up. The emperor didn't have a concubine, but his lover has been steady. There couldn't have been only Astana and Perez, but Perez is the only one who survived. The empress was as thorough and heartless as she was. She would do anything to make his son the next emperor. For such an empress, Perez is an unbearable thorn. If she put more pressure on you to go to the academy. The Empress called me not too long ago, and she told me to go to the academy. Perez's voice speaking is unusually low. Did that happen? Sneakily, I read Caitlin and Kyle's minds. I'm sure there was more to it than that. Seeing their faces visibly stiffened, Perez said no more. He didn't seem to want to mention it again. If so, there's nothing we can do. I nodded with a sigh and said to Perez, maybe that will happen more often in the future, until you get out of the academy, of the palace, and head for the academy. But I don't want to go to the academy. Yeah, that's your choice by far, no matter how Empress is. She can force you to enter the academy. The law was designed to prevent those who were pushed out of the family succession structure from being forcibly handed over to the academy as if they were accepted. Academy admissions must be made by self, otherwise the Empress would have thrown Perez into the academy a long time ago. So she's trying to convince you. Then it doesn't matter. Perez answered silently. If she doesn't force me, I won't be admitted to the academy. It was a tough stance. Like him, the conversation was cut off for a while. Perez is lost in thought. What he's worried about. I wondered if there was any way I could cheer Perez up, and suddenly I remembered the gift in my bag. I was brought it to give to Perez. I took out a black palm-sized box, put it in front of him, and sipped the milk nonchalantly. What is this? Perez asked bewilderedly. I didn't answer. I picked it up on the way. End of chapter 86. Chapter 87. Did you pick it up on your way? Open it up and take a look. Perez looked at me again and opened the box with a careful touch. As soon as a little sunlight hit, hundreds of thousands of glittering jewels appeared. Is this a diamond? It is a diamond brooch, specially made for Perez. He didn't even touch a diamond he'd never seen before. He just looked at it. How? Do you like it? Glamorous. It's an ambiguous sentiment, to be honest, with a little bit of sadness. I deliberately put my utmost effort into it. I custom made it for you. I like it. Without thinking for half a second, he answered right away. I think he's a bit quick to change his posture. Don't just watch it, try to see if it suits you. I was going to pretend to be cool. I couldn't win the impatience and said. After a moment of hesitation, Perez pulled out the brooch and put it on his chest. The jewel, polished with the most colorful method of cutting by Crowley, was so beautiful that I couldn't stop looking at it, despite its being so shiny that hurt my eyes. Wow! In the background, Kylo let out a small exclamation. I couldn't agree more with that feeling. The brooch. The brooch was made only for Perez. The same was true of high purity and large diamonds, but this was even more so in harmony with the humpstone, which was crafted in the same way. I knew it would look good on you. I was proud that Perez's beauty seemed to come to life even more. Carlos and Katie nodded vigorously, as if they agreed with me. Thank you. Perez, curiously unable to take his eyes off the diamond, but it must have been very expensive. Well, a little bit, no. If you were going to pay for this brooch, it would have cost you hundreds of gold. It's all the more so because it's a diamond that we can't sell these days. After all, the ransom has jumped several times. I shrugged and asked Perez. You dress up here and there. You'll look good anywhere. Perez nodded, fiddling with the brooch on his chest. But he soon put the brooch back in the box. I'll do it on a special day. Well, it's up to the person who got the gift. Perez seemed to be in a very good mood now, seeing a smile softly around his mouth. Neither did I. It's funny how presenting Perez made me realize I was the owner of the diamond mine. We're about to get back. I was going to say let's go back to Pirate Palace because I thought there was a cold wind. There's a guest. The familiar and resonant voice of Emperor Jovanes was heard. The Emperor was not alone. Behind the Emperor who entered the garden with him behind his back was the Empress and Astana. Perhaps the Empress who invited Astana to spend time with the Emperor would not hide her discomfort. And first of all, Astana, who was looking at me, made eye contact. Astana, now 15 years old, was completely in his adolescence. It was also closer to what I remembered as Astana, the first prince. I greet your majesty, the Emperor, the Empress, and the first prince. I hurried up from my seat and greeted in good manners. Someone did, and it was you. Jovanes took turns looking at Perez with curious eyes, and in the end he talked to me in a friendly voice. It's been a long time, Florentia. Was it the last time Galliahan was awarded the Order of Medal for National Foundation? A smiley face facing that really looks like a friendly next door guy. In fact, it's hard to imagine that he's slicker than anyone else and calculates political gains and losses. Either it wasn't an attitude towards Perez or an act of weighing his own interests above his children. Anyway, Jovanes is the emperor of this empire, I said with a white smile on purpose, as if I was ashamed. You even remember that. It's an honor, your majesty. That, Jovain said, opening his eyes round and then smiling. You speak so beautifully. Thank you for your compliment, your majesty. Polite and cute. But at the same time, there is no reason to be afraid and with great determination. Because I'm Lombardi. I smiled softly, not avoiding the emperor's gaze. Then a shadow crossed the eye of the emperor. The emperor, who had been looking at me for a while, turned his head slightly and looked at the empress and said, There's no place like this for a cup of tea. Why don't we join them, Empress? That's what the Emperor says, and the Empress has something to say. So it be, Your Majesty. But at the same time, she didn't forget to stare at Perez as if she was going to kill him. Additional tables and chairs were placed where Perez and I were. Such an awkward and uncomfortable place has been set up. Astana and Perez, who happened to sit face to face, did not even look at each other, and the Emperor drank tea alone in such an uncomfortable atmosphere. No matter what other people do, you just have to be comfortable with yourself. He was such a despicable emperor. Then again, Stana and I met in eye contact. Why does he keep looking at me like that? It was a really uncomfortable tea time. Oh, I can't wait to go home. The emperor asked me. I regret it. I should have stayed at Poirak Palace. Is Gallian all right now? Yes, thankfully the medicine worked well and recovered without any after effects. That's a good thing, the empress said as she intervened in the conversation. What a relief. She was going to take away my father's ready-to-wear business. And the second prince, the empress is called Perez. Yes, empress. Varus replied reluctantly with a smug smile. You'd better welcome guests inside the Porek Palace as much as possible. That's where the second prince lives. In short, she meant not to wander outside but to stay in Porek Palace. No, why? So you and Astana can walk around in perfect condition? I thought I'd stay still and drink tea, but I can't. I answered instead. It's my fault, Empress, with my face full of tears. I wanted to see the garden here, so I begged the second prince. Please scold me. The Empress was embarrassed for a moment and coughed in vain. Well, if Lady Lombardi says so, let it slide this time. I heard that anyone who enters the palace is free to enter. It's my fault that I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. I immediately turned to gaze to the Emperor. In fact, everyone knows that this garden is freely available. The Empress is being unreasonable. Under these circumstances, there is a certain word that the Emperor can say. It's not that you're wrong. This garden is open to the public. Really? Then can I come to see here every time I come to the palace, Your Majesty? The Emperor looked at the Empress and nodded slowly. Oh, I'm glad. The Emperor said there was no problem, so the Empress had nothing to say. I smiled more innocently on purpose and said to Perez, I can't believe I'm going to be able to see the garden again. I'm glad. Aren't you, Your Majesty, the second prince? I kicked Perez's foot under the table. Yes, I am. Fortunately, Perez replied appropriately. Thank you, Your Majesty. I kept smiling at the Emperor, leaving the Empress out of the conversation. The Emperor stared at me like that and said in a mischievous voice, Well, she's different, Florentia. Why don't you be my daughter? There will be a lot more fun to be my daughter than Gallihan's. I'm in the pellet business these days in the mine. You don't even know how much fun I live. It was ridiculous, but I answered deftly with a smile. I don't know about my father, but you might have to fight with my grandfather. Are you going to be okay? My grandfather really fond of me. My grandfather really is fond of me. What? Surprised by my bold reaction, the emperor burst into a big laugh. Ha ha ha! What a witty child! Then, in a moment, the voice became quiet. Yes, I can see it at a glance that you are loved by the household lord. What a good quality diamond! It was my head where the emperor's eyes were fixed. To be exact, it was a hairpin, a big diamond the size of a thumbnail, and the smaller diamond were embedded around it. These days, diamonds are so popular that it's hard to get a small one. It's so sweet of him to buy such a hairpin for his granddaughter. Even so, the emperor's eyes did not fall off my hairpin. It was terrible greed. Obviously, the emperor was bought twice the size of it when diamond business was established. He also secretly bought several sets of earrings and necklaces. I know for sure because I approved directly to Claravan. Such a physical desire, even though he was born as a prince, has given everything and became an emperor. He was a great man in a way. I raised my hand and said, smoothing my hairpin, I'm ashamed of this, but this hairpin is not a gift from my grandfather. So is it, Callihan? No, I got it from my teacher, Your Majesty. Teacher? Jovane tilted his head. Yes, Clarivan Pellet, who runs Pellet Company, is my teacher. Oh, Clarivan Pellet? Jovane was genuinely surprised as if he didn't know. He's still teaching you even after he left Lombardy. Yes, Your Majesty, you must be truly a precious disciple when I see he takes care of you even though he's so busy. Thanks to his care, I'm watching and learning a lot. Yeah, that's the best learning. I could feel it immediately with my skin. The Emperor's eyes on me have changed. But Astana, who was still without saying anything, caused an accident. What's this? He suddenly took the brooch box in front of Perez. End of chapter 87. Chapter 88. Oh, it's there was no time to stop. Astana, who took the brooch box as if it was his own, immediately opened the lid. Diamond brooch? What? This big diamond? Astana and the Empress muttered in surprise. At the same time, Snap, Perez rose from his seat and took the brooch box roughly. You, the Empress glared at the sight. How could you possibly do that? Astana didn't seem to believe that the brooch belonged to Perez. It's a brooch. I gave him as a gift. I said with a humble smile. Your Highness, second prince, if you don't mind, why don't you show the others a little more brooch? Show off more properly. Perez was very loathsome, but he obediently reopened the brooch box. Greed and envy flowed down from the eyes of the three, who saw the best jewels shining. It's the best, it's thrilling. Oh, the second prince has a good friend. The only one that had a mind to say was the emperor, who already had a large diamond. As far as I know, the empress and the Stana don't own any diamonds yet. Angenis put in a few orders, but I put the priorities at the back of my hand, so it will be very later for the empress to get her hands on diamonds unless she buys them with more money than any other aristocrat. Originally owned by the Angenis, the mine is now mine. This diamond was originally owned by the empress and the Stana. It's mine now. There was something I really wanted to say to the two people sitting side by side and staring blankly at the diamond brooch. You don't have this at home, do you? A few days after, a few days after visiting Imperial Palace, I came to the Pellet office again. She has wasted a lot of money, Clarivan said while turning over the papers with frowned eyes. After the Pellet's banquet, I asked Clarivan for help again. Bastian's performance was excellent enough to tilt Clarivan's head over his affair. Who knew that Bastian was approaching Anjanus, so that everyone doesn't doubt Bastian's mind about Shannonette at all. However, when I told him the scene I witnessed myself, he quickly rolled up his sleeves and secretly recognized it by mobilizing his remaining connections in Lombardy. It's weird that he hasn't been caught in a while. Is it that bad? Yes, of course. If you look closely, you'll see something suspicious in no time. I don't think anyone suspected Western Skulks. No one else. Western Skulks, son-in-law of the Lombardi family. Who knew that a member of Lombardi would be siphoning off Lombardi's wealth? Only those who know very well about the inside will know. There's nothing wrong on the surface. Clarivan talked for a long time just by looking into it for a few days. Western got married 16 years ago. Then how much did he steal and make it his own in that long period? I shook my head because I didn't even want to think. Investor Skull sent me a visit. He said there's something he'd like to discuss for a moment. Did he find out that Clarivan was investigating himself? He asked me directly the day of the banquet, so I don't think so. What is he up to? With the mines it was supposed to go to Anjanus being taken away by us, I had a rough idea of what he wanted to discuss. Oh, and what about real estate? Did you acquire any real estate recently? I remembered that Bastian had made a living for him, so I asked Clarivan to find out. Excuse me. Excuse me. There's a house that moved from Lombardy to Bastian Skulls about half a year ago. Strangely, he didn't leave the right documents. Maybe it wasn't a normal move, but if that's the case, then the real estate manager in Lombardy did it. Who the hell? Who's managing Lombardy's property is none other than Peace. You mean Peace had some knowledge of Bastian's behavior? This Tambas. It's unclear whether Peace knew that Bastian was cheating. I thought Peace would at least know that Lombardy's property was precious. Well, if it's in his interest, he'd give him more. Clerva nodded in agreement with me. So he's the one who passed down the habit. I mean, it's like father and son. It was Belsac who was in charge of real estate management after kicking me out of my previous life. Hand over Lombardi's real estate to close aides. It was exactly like this, like his fathers do, like father and son. It's nothing. Then meet Vestian Skulls and listen to what he's talking about. Yes, lady. And with Vestian, the reason why Vestian asked Clarivan to meet was obvious, so I made some moves and told Clarivan how to respond. Asterisk. Come on in, Bastian. Long time no see, Clarivan. Bastian Skulls visited the Pellet's office. It was only half a day after sending a call. He can visit. He should have come before, Bastian said with a high air. He sounded as if he was sorry that he couldn't care. Clarivan's straight eyebrows twitched invisibly. He hasn't figured out the situation yet. Confused, Clarivan looked straight to Bastian, crossed one leg, and placed his interlaced hand on it. He also raised the corners of his mouth and laughed at them. Even if you had come earlier, I wouldn't have met you. I'd have been too busy to make time for Bastian. It meant he couldn't afford to meet you. Watching Bastian's eyes twitch, Clarivan continues leisurely. So what brings you here today? This is very disappointing. Do we only see each other when we have something to do? Yes, Clarivan said plainly. We don't have personal relationships enough to sit face to face, and Clarivan's icy gaze swept Bastian from head to foot once. He pointed out his arrogant attitude as if he had visited his subordinate's office. Clarivan was no longer Lombardi's employee. What was more regrettable was Bastian. Clarivan could always get up and go to meet someone much more important and valuable than Bastian. Go home. Go home. Perhaps aware of it, Bastian took his back off the sofa's backrest and sat down straight away. Only then did Clarivan's sharpness abate a little. The reason I'm here today is that Bastian glimpsed, checking the closed office door, the invitation to the last banquet. Yes, what happened? If you don't tell me exactly, it's hard. It's hard for me to answer. Are you saying there was something wrong with the invitation to the last banquet? No, it's not that. It was even pathetic to see Bastian smiling hard. There was a person at the banquet who didn't seem to receive an invitation from Pellet. Oh, Lady Maria Patron. Bastian's face hardened for a moment when his mistress' name came out. He tried to smile again after that, but it wasn't the same smile as before. Meanwhile, Tarvan was again admiring Florentia's ability. She told him two things about Bastian as if she had predicted it. Indeed, one of them came out. Clarivan was as expected and moved again under his expressionless face. Wow, Bastian washed his face, and the face revealed was a little different from what Clarivan had ever known. Since when have you known? Skimmed away the fake smile from his handsome face. All that remained were shiny eyes. I don't think that's the big question right now. Then I'll ask you again. What the hell were you thinking? Did you want to see Shannonette collapse in shock in front of all of them? It was too poor for an excuse for someone who cheated. Worry about your wife. Clarivan laughed in vain. It was just a gesture of goodwill. I thought Lady Patron might want to come to Pellet's banquet. It must be hard for her to get to get a place in society since she recently moved up from the Scots estate. Bastian flinched. It was because he realized that Clarivan knew more about Maria than he thought. Now that she has been to my banquet, which is said to have been a feast of the century, it's much easier. It was true. Maria Patron had become close to the high-ranking family she had found on the spot and had succeeded in stepping into society to some extent. I thought she'd rather be thanked. At the words of Clarivan, Bastian's head began to spin quickly. Clarivan seemed to invite Maria to the occasion with real goodwill. There was no sign of condemning himself for having cheated on Shannonette. Vestian asked carefully. So it was really a good invitation? The longer you work in Lombardy, the more you see, hear, and feel. Clarivan replied with a nod. I've come to think of you better since I found out about Lady Maria Patron. I can't believe you're being positive. After catching his breath, Clarivan uttered what he had prepared. It was refreshing, I guess. Vestian was about to burst into laughter. He sees that even Clarivan despises Lombardy. In a way, he was like an ally of Vestian himself. He felt relieved and relaxed. Yeah, that's right. Lombardy's humans are not long-lasting. When he misunderstood that Clarivan disliked Lombardy like himself, Vestian's words and actions were outspoken. Is that why you came out on your own? Well, I guess so. Haha, you made a very wise choice. I'm jealous. Vestian smiled, leaning back to his head. And that in the last lyrical mine, you've been a very skilled man. Thank you for the compliment. And I felt very lighthearted because I thought it would be easier to talk about. Say it comfortably. Clarivan instigated him. End of chapter 88. Chapter 89. I'm slowly starting to gain independence from Lombardy and I want you to help me. If it's independence, I'll divorce and going back to Scots. I'm sick and tired of Lombardy. But it's not going to be easy to divorce Lombardy without justifiable reasons. The alimony will be substantial. Ah, that's fine because there's a way to think about it. We've had a lot of mental pain dealing with Lombardy, so I'll take the alimony anyway. Don't worry. What do you mean? You are so shameless cheating. Clarivan became displeased. It was disgusting that Vestian mistook Clarivan as his ally. So what can I do to help you? No, different. Lyrical mine is or diamond mine. Why don't you leave the mine to my family? Exactly the second reason that Florentia predicted, as expected of Lady Florentia. Clarivan was inspired by Lombardi's hope and light to deal with the trash in front of him. Well, I'll think about it. Vestian could not hide his disappointment at Clarivan's words and tried to convince him with various words, but Clarivan kept his attitude of I'll think about it. It was also half true. He has to follow the will of Florentia. Okay, you'll have to think of it. You'll have to think about it. Vestian stepped back for now. Instead, he made an appointment with Clarivan a few days later. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. At that time, he was planning to meet the terms of the contract by lowering mining fees, but annoyed by the fact that things didn't happen immediately, the act of arriving at Lombardy's mansion and taking off his coat was rough. I'd have to get the right of the diamond mine so I could leave Lombardy. Then a familiar voice spoke behind his back. When did you get here, Vestian? It was his wife, Shananet. Vestian, who twisted his face and uttered a curse inside, turned back. Shananet. It was the face that only the friendly smile of Vestian's thoughts that the world knew. But Shananet's expression wasn't so bright. Shananet's face, standing in front of Vestian with a package of documents in his hand, was full of shade. Let's have a word. At the cool words of Shananet, Vestian flicked his tongue inside. A couple of conversations over the past few months have always been like this. It began to happen as soon as Maria left the Scots estate and moved nearby. Shananet suddenly began to ask questions about Vestian's stay out, which she had never cared about, and also put the brakes on hanging out with his brother-in-law Viz. She also showed a little interest in the work of Lombardy mining, which was entirely part of Vestian. Like a person who knows something. What's going on again, Shananet? Vestian said, hiding his tantrums, smiling helplessly. If it's because I didn't come back home yesterday, I can't help it because I'm busy with work. Tap. Vestian stopped talking after seeing the documents Shananet put on the table. Why do you have the mining company's transaction history? Even Vestian's words were sharpened. There were no choice but to do so. It was a history of taking money away from Lombardy. Vestian, Shananet's calm voice rang in the room. I'm sorry to meddle in your business without your consent. I know it's unpleasant. Shananet apologized calmly first, but I had to make sure, since accidentally listening to the conversation between Vestian and Duroc top owners, Shananet has never had a day of peace. At first, she thought she was wrong, but when she heard that Lombardy had failed at the auction of the Lyra coal mine, she was in despair. Without the variable pellet, the coal mine or the diamond buried below it would have been returned to Angenes, as promised by Vestian and Duroc top. Jeannette had to accept the fact that her husband is joining hands with Lombardy's hostile family. Slowly, she began to investigate what his husband had been doing, and the immediate document was the result. Explain, Vestian. What the hell is going on? Nevertheless, Jeannette sincerely wanted to believe Vestian must have his reasons. How did you get this? It's all classified. But the husband was only wondering how she got her hands on the papers. You wouldn't be able to access the mining company's secrets without my consent. How can Vestian, who was gibbering in embarrassment, found the answer himself? Yes, that's right. You were Lombardy. Lombardy's line of command had the authority to engage in the business of Lombardy whenever they wanted to. It didn't matter who was in charge. As soon as they want, they will have the authority over the person in charge. It was an absolute power not given to those who became Lombardy through marriage. So what do you want to say, Shananet? How can you be so confident, Vestian? Shananet shook her head. You've siphoned off a lot of money from Lombardy in the meantime, and that's what I found out. How can you? It's all for us. You did it for us? Vestian made up a sad face. Shananet is weak-minded. He was determined to take advantage of it. Shananet, I love you so much. As a man, I married you with the shame of not being able to pass my last name to my child. In the meantime, he seems to have been caught stealing Lombardy's money, but there was still a way out. The people in your family kept ignoring me with the skulls. It was mainly Bees and Laurels who ignored Vestian and skulls. But in the end, it was the two who got closest by necessity. But Vestian left that out and went on. That's why I had to. I'm going to make the skulls a little bit more suitable for Lombardy by siphoning off by siphoning off Lombardi's fortune. Did I feel comfortable to do that? Bastian continued to appeal to Shannonette for sympathy. There's a grant from Lombardi to the Scots. Couldn't you be satisfied with that money? Thousands of gold are provided to Scots every year. It was Lulak's consideration for his in-laws. Bastian sighed, pretending to be frustrated. Yes, it is true that he arbitrarily gave Lombardi's money to Scots, but that kind of money doesn't mean anything to Lombardi, does it? I tried my best to find a way for your husband and you to be happy. It didn't matter. At any rate, it was Lombardi's property. It was not money that Bastian could give to his family at will. Shannonette was aware of that fact, but she couldn't pour those words out on Bastian. Shannonette loved her husband too much to do so. Shannonette was rather saddened by the words, "It was all for us." The proof is that for years now, no one knew when it was gone. It doesn't mean much to Lombardi, but it's something Scots needed. Shannonette wanted to cry, although she accepted many things in an inevitable fate. Since she was born a Lombardi, even her beloved husband seemed to fall victim to her own birth. She felt guilty. Eventually, Shannonette shook her head and said, "I'm not going to tell my father about this right now." He knew it. Bastian sang a delight to himself, but no more. And in the meantime, the money that went back to Scots, let's say Scots borrowed it from Lombardi. Even if it takes a long time, it's all back to Lombardi. Of course, Bastian didn't mean to, but he nodded passionately. Shannonette left the bedroom looking so tired that he spoke to Bastian for the last time. "The children want to see their father. I know you're busy at work. Show them a little more face for the twins, Bastian." Shannonette went out, and the room door was closed. Bastian, who was left alone, distorted his face, greeted to the end. It was so disgusting to always pretend to be noble by himself. He got goosebumps because he didn't seem like a human being to keep a calm face no matter what. Then an object on the table caught Bastian's eye. It was the relic of Shannonette's most cherished mother. It was actually annoying to sweep and wipe the shabby necklace, which was nothing special. How can you stay so calm at all the time? Laughing profusely, Bastian put it in his pocket. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. What are we going to do today? You're right, sighed the naughty little boy. I don't know if Craney has unlimited stamina. No matter how much he plays, he's not tired. Lorraine, who was playing with Craney too, ended up suffering from body aches. I had no choice but to bring Craney, who was crying because he didn't like a stallion. He's a kid who collects bread pieces for mice, living in the kitchen because they're cute. I don't know what they're thinking. Taking this kid to the hunting ground for. Shall we go read a book, or should we make a flower crown like last time? Excuse me. I'm going to the twins. Since it's holiday, the twins are probably at home without training. They're the only one I know who can handle Craney's full-like stamina. If I go and throw Craney, they'll have fun. As I walked, listening to Craney's chatter next to me, I quickly arrived near the twins' house. What's wrong with the atmosphere? The front door is wide open, and the atmosphere is chaotic. Oh my god, who the hell? Some employees can hear a murmur as they look toward the open door. Craney, come here. I grabbed Craney's hand and carefully stepped inside. I'm sorry, I have seen to die. The first thing I heard was someone's loud voice. Entering the drawing room, two maids, who seemed to be the main characters of the voice, were bowing their heads. The two were apologizing for something continuously with their white faces. I'm sorry, Madam Shannonette. One of them was one of the maids responsible for the main building. Shannonette, the target of the apology, was standing in front of the two, so her face was not visible. The maid looked hopelessly up at Shannonette's back and cried, closing her eyes again. I'll find the necklace no matter what. End of chapter 89. Chapter 90. Necklace. Did someone lose Shannonette's necklace? The maid who can't raise her head now is a person who has worked in Lombardi's mansion for decades. She has a strong personality, so she won't be so contemplative about most things. We can look for the maids who cleaned the bedrooms this morning. There you go. Shannonette, who was standing still with her back turned, said it was monotonous as if it were someone else's business. But even with that little voice, the maid stiffened. No, Madam Shannonette, I'll do whatever it takes to get the criminal. Nellie, Shannonette called the maid's name. I think I lost my necklace. Yes, come to think of it, I went out a few days ago. Where the necklace? I must have lost it outside then. Lie. Shannonette values the necklace, which is her mother's keepsake. Anyone living in the mansion knew she does not wear it unless it was a really special day. The maid seemed unable to find anything to say. But so don't make people suffer. It was not something that could be easily covered. Like the Lombardi family, high-ranking nobles take this kind of thing very strictly, in a place where there were precious objects strewn everywhere, but ordinary people couldn't even see for their whole life. When an employee touches the owner's stuff, the employee's accommodation is completely overturned on that day. But if you don't get what you're looking for, you'll have to take some powerful servants and torture them to confess. Perhaps the maid was aware in anticipation of such a future. Do you understand me? Shannonette, who still hasn't shown her face, asked in a stern voice. Yes, yes, Madam Shannonette. Thank you. The maid, who probably cleaned the room, said, barely holding her quivering body. Let me rest. The maids and other employees all went outside at Shannonette's command. I was wondering if she should go to her. Somehow it doesn't seem right to leave Shannonette alone. The door closes with a clatter. It was that moment Shannonette's body, which was standing upright, collapsed. She looked so small from behind, sitting there and covering his mouth. Craney looked at it and tried to approach her, but I shook my head and don't let him go. Mother, it was because Gillian and Myron, who were watching the situation in the room, approached Shannonette. After hesitating for a while, the twins carefully touched Shannonette's shoulder. Perhaps because of her sons, Shannonette tried to pick herself up, but it didn't seem easy. Little Craney is already teary-eyed just by looking at Shannonette and the twins. Let's come over next time, I said in a small voice, holding Craney's hand slightly and turned around. My grandfather was looking at Shannonette with sad eyes. Looking at the back of Shannonette, who had collapsed for a while, the grandfather quietly turned around. He didn't say anything, but I thought it meant to follow him. I took Rainy's hand and came out to the garden with my grandfather, like a habit every day, following my grandfather who takes a walk on the same road. For Rainy, grandfather take a walk slower than usual. Rainy walked quietly without saying. Perhaps he was aware of grandfather's feelings. And finally, we reached the evergreen forest. It was a place where memories of grandfather and grandmother remained. Grandfather stopped and said, gently touching the biggest tree, "Do you know why Shannonette is so sad when she lost a necklace?" "I heard it was my grandmother's keepsake," I answered carefully. "It's a precious thing. I'd be really sad if something so precious disappeared." My grandfather, who touched the pine tree, as if he missed it, smiled back at me, and he patted my head. It was a touch that was a little lackluster. "Yes, I can't believe you understood Shannonette's feelings. Our Tia is very kind." And my grandfather spoke mumbled. Shannonette was very close to Natalia. She was the first and the only daughter among her siblings. Natalia gave it to Shannonette herself just before she closed her eyes. The necklace was more special than I thought. Now that she's lost such a keepsake, how great a sense of loss must be. If it's something so precious, she must find it at all costs. Aunt Shannonette is a peace-loving person in Lombardy. What? It's just, I guess she's like that, I said with a small smile to my grandfather, who looked at me in surprise. It was a conclusion that I came to think about why Shannonette divorced in her previous life, losing so much. Shannonette did not want to break the peace of Lombardy because of her problems. She never dreamed that Vestian had another woman, and she carried everything for Lombardy and the twins. Shannonette liked that was foolishly good choice. I thought for a moment and carefully patted my grandfather's sleeve and asked, "Just in case, Grandpa, do you have anything left by my grandfather? Things she can always carry like necklaces?" "Well, there are a few rings left by Natalia. Then why don't you give it to Aunt Jeanette? It may not be as much as a necklace, but I think it can fill in a little empty space." "Oh, that's a good way. Yes, I should." My grandfather's face, which had remained bitter, was wide open. "Oh my God, smart girl." My grandfather even hugged me so tightly, and that his prickly bird stung my face. Rainy looked at his grandfather laughing loudly for the first time, and then sneaked up to get a pat on the head. "Yeah, yeah, I'm going to go find Natalia's jewelry box." Patting Crane's round head, grandfather continued to laugh so cheerfully. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Caramel Avenue, a dessert shop, has already marked its third day of work this week. Today was the day that Clarivan met Bastian again, and I stopped by for something sweet. I didn't doubt that Clarivan would do well as I instructed, so I felt light on my way to the dessert shop. Not long ago, there were more days when I didn't just buy a cake and came up to the second floor and ate a piece or two. Delicious. The sweetness and savory taste of the soft cream, which was filled with forks, made me stomp my feet. Bade the waiter smiled a small smile, putting a plate and other desserts in front of me. "You really like our cake?" "Because it's delicious, and I feel at ease when I come here." Ease? Yes, I feel like I'm in my hideout that no one knows. At my words, Bates stopped moving and stared at me. Her mysterious amber eyes made me feel as if I were looking at a real gem. "I'm just saying that." I sidestepped his eyes and turned the topic around. "Today I'd like to have 2 boxes of desserts for adults. I'm going to give it as a gift. It's a dessert that adults would like, so I was going to bring it to Shannonette, who has gotten dark since she lost her necklace. Please send one of them to Pellet Company. It was a snack gift for Clarivan and Violet, who worked hard these days." "Yes, lady, I'll bring it if you wait a minute." Bate nodded politely and went downstairs, left me alone again. I enjoyed the new dessert that Bate brought a while ago. "Ha ha ha, lady, you're good at joking." A group of women on the other side of the same second floor burst into laughter. It wasn't that they were offensive or anything. I just looking back because there's a loud noise. My eyes met with a woman in the crowd. It was Maria Patron, who was smiling with her face covered with a fan. Oh, it's so disgusting. The happiness that seemed to fly a little while ago disappeared in an instant. I can't believe I ran into that woman here. To take matters worse, Maria Patron and her neighbors whispered a few words and came toward me. "Oh, come on, don't come. Hello, lady. Are you Florentia Lombardi?" She dares to come and talk to me. "Yes, that's right. I deserve the Children's of the Year award as long as I didn't tear that woman's hair off here. I deserve it. I saw you at the Pellet Company banquet last time." Maria Patron, who seems a little embarrassed by my cold reaction, smiles forcefully and pretends to be close. "By the way, wow, the feast was a little hectic for the young people, right? Seeing that you don't remember me, that day I greeted the Lord of Lombardy separately." Maria Patron shrugged her shoulders and said, aware of the girls she was with were deliberately listening. "Ah, that's when I pretended to remember." Maria Patron made a sure face. A low-ranking nobleman who spoke to my grandfather without knowing the subject. The ladies burst into laughter, and Maria Patron's face turned red. How stupid. I thought she only had eyes for men. She doesn't have eyes for people. No matter how young I am, she doesn't even realize that she's not enough to treat me like a fool. A person of such poor sense is nothing but a farce in the bloody social circle of the imperial capitals. Ladies who are laughing at Maria Patron to their heart's content are just like that. People who are making fun of a low-class aristocrat from the countryside. Finally, it was time to turn my head, looking coldly at Maria Patron. Something shouldn't have. Did I see it wrong? I blinked, but it didn't disappear. That necklace, a round sapphire necklace with unique cutting and high purity, although it doesn't have much decoration, it was obviously Shannonette's necklace. End of chapter 90.